that is contrary to life, and anything that is a cause of death, sickness, or destruction. To cleanse means to outgrow those defects which impair the person and endanger his world. So the first step always, represented in this case by the moon, is purification, the lowest rung of the ladder. All things must become clean. Clean inwardly, clean morally, clean and simple and honest in their dealings with each other. Purity in this case means overcoming ulterior motives, overcoming all of the negative criticisms and evil thoughts which offend the law as well as our neighbor, and also to realize that this is the first step and that no one can take the second step until he passes the first one. So the search inwardly for the mystery of the seven-rung ladder has to begin with the individual bringing his material, physical life into order. A lot of people would like to jump right past that and go on to something better. But unless it is conquered, there is no receptivity to something better. The individual who has not corrected his faults will not be happy by lifting them to another level. He will keep right on having his faults. So the first step of the first rung of the ladder was purification. It was the process of bringing the life into harmony with natural law. It was to make the world a natural garden, as it was intended to be, in which all things lived together in peace, and everything was mutually supporting all other things. This land of personal purification is a matter of quite a little serious thought for most people. One of the best ways is to sit down, figure out what your most obvious failings are, and then dividing them up, make a little slip of paper and say, I have a rather quick temper. I'm not very patient. So for the next 30 days, I will work with patience. I will try to discover why I am impatient, and I will also discover why I am punished for impatience. If I am sufficiently impatient, I will have nervous ailments. If it gets too bad, I may have to go to a counselor. If it still gets even worse, it'll break my home. All these things will have to be taken into consideration. But there is no cure except to change, to grow up into a realization of the value. To fight yourself into a control is no good, unless inwardly your consciousness supports that control. It is of no value to you or anything that you are doing. There is no way of getting away except by correcting the fault. Correcting it because we want to grow, not because the fault is a delightful thing we would like to enjoy whenever the occasion arises. When someone offends us, we want to be offended, and we want to show it. So then there are two offenses, one by the other person and one by ourselves. They're in trouble for what they have done, and we are in trouble because we have been unable to maintain our own integrity in the presence of pressure. So all the way along we take the physical things first. Now the physical things are laws, society. The physical things are marriage and home and family and parents and business. All these things have got to be redeemed. That is, they've got to be straightened out. It doesn't mean that we have to give up everything and become wanderers in the desert. It means that we have to try to use things and not abuse them, trying to find out how to be the greater good to all concerned for the growth and unfoldment of internal faculties. So this goes on until the person can really honestly say that he is no longer hating anything or anyone, that he is no longer out to cheat somebody, that he has no longer the determination to commit a crime against society because of his own personal dissatisfactions. If he gradually understands, then comes the point. To understand, he must begin to learn. He must begin to be aware that there are laws. He has to recognize that he is not making a reformation of himself simply because of something he doesn't understand. The physical solution to it is health. If it is bad for his health, then it's wrong. If it is bad for his associations, if it breaks up the normal experiences of living, if it puts penalties upon others that they do not need, then it is not good. But he has to find out for himself how to improve this situation. Now, as he gets a little further along, he comes again onto a new rung of the ladder. And this rung is supposedly governed by the god Mercury. And Mercury is communication. Mercury is also intelligence. Now, Mercury is not philosophy. Mercury is the kind of intelligence that we get in a public school system. Mercury is the training of the mind for the purpose of adjustment with circumstances and conditions. So we come now to the second rung of the ladder, and that is education. Education must become the source of certainties for us. Education must help us to have strength to make the changes that we need to make in order to accomplish the goals which we are presumed to accomplish. Therefore, education must lead us to idealism and not to materialism. Education must help us to understand the divine plan for things and not accept as inevitable human mistakes. We have to use education to find out what is worth knowing, how to find out what does the most to help us to be constructive, useful people. The mind gives us certain faculties upon which we can build and by which we can grow. But we have to in all ways find the inspiration, the integrities to make these adjustments useful and permanent in our lives. After we decide how to be educated, then we have to find out how to use education. An education that uses only our physical faculties for the maintenance of our physical securities is not adequate. Education must make us citizens of the whole great wheel of life. It must cause us to become potential citizens of a universal world, a world that extends beyond the stars. We should recognize ourselves as parts of a vast plan and not as poor, suffering individuals deserted by everything, including time. This is the second type of thought. Then we come to the rulership of the third rung of the ladder, which is Venus. Now, Venus is emotional maturity. It is the revelation of the emotional beauty factor. It governs affection, it governs beauty, it governs all of those impulses which arise from the sublimities of existence. It is also a sincere affair. The great keynote of Venus is sincerity, that all emotions must be true, must be real, must be right, that all emotions must lead the individual to a higher degree of insight and, if necessary or possible, impel others to self-improvement. In other words, the satisfaction of affections is the proper use of our feelings of unity, of responsibility, and of all those natural relationships which are part of our third step of initiation, so to say. In other words, we have to cleanse the inside of the emotional cup. We have to purify our lives. We do not become ascetics. We do not become monastics. We become kindly people, using the powers that we possess as they were intended. All misuse is tragedy. Things must be as they should be. And that takes the next rung of the ladder, and that next rung is the sun. Of course, the ancients considered the sun to be a planet. This was not true, but for their analogy of the purpose they were working with, it was suitable until other planets were discovered. The sun, therefore, comes to be the life giver. The sun is the contribution of each individual to the eternal growth of things. It is the problem of bringing life and light to others. It is service. It is protection. It is the necessary sacrifice of self-interest for the good of all things. The Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten worshipped or venerated the divine power in the form of a sunball. Each of the rays of the sun ending in a human hand, these hands intended to lift up the holy, lift up the sad, lift up the imperfect, and to rescue all life from the restrictions of ambition and things of this nature. Therefore, it was the problem of the sun that the individual becomes a sun on this level of integration, and therefore must give his light to the whole world, and must never in any way fail to share those good values which he has, as light of morality, light of integrity, light of comfort, consolation, and pity. All these things belong to the sharing of life one with another. After this has been more or less well accomplished, we pass to Mars, and this is one that most people will have a great trouble with. It is high on the level of initiation rites, because it would be impossible to accomplish it without considerable previous growth. But Mars is competition. Mars is mutual destruction for profit. Mars is the desperate effort to overwhelm, overcome, or dominate something. Now in nations this causes war after war, and is one of the most destructive factors there is in human life. But most always also it is a symbol of domination in little things. Domination in a home, domination in business, domination in the community, even domination in theology. All domination, all effort to bind by force others to slavery to us or our purposes, our ambitions, the sacrifice of the life of the child in order that the child may fulfill our ambitions. All of these things come under Mars. Mars is a more or less active, somewhat destructive force, but it is also the basis of courage. It is the basis of willingness to sacrifice self for the common good. It is sometimes the sign of the martyr, but it is always the sign constructively of the struggle for peace, the continuance of the determination to do what is right, even in the midst of great adversity. So Mars gives us the inspiration or the identity which makes it possible for us to fight the good fight, which is the fight against darkness, the fight against ignorance, the fight against death, but not the fight against man or the law. And the peace comes at the end of this kind of struggle, because understanding and insight become stronger than strife. And until our understanding is stronger than strife, there will be no peace in the world. That takes us to the next problem, and that is Jupiter. Now Jupiter, of course, was the father, or Zeus was the father of the gods. Zeus has come down to us in our thinking as the symbol of great intellectual maturity. Zeus is judgment. It is also the basis of all higher philosophical dedications. Zeus is the righteous ruler, but Zeus is also a symbol of that ruler which is the part of ourselves. Gradually we have gotten ourselves away from the domination of faculties, sensory perceptions, and the lower parts of consciousness. We come finally to Jupiter. And Jupiter is the symbol of a strange kind of majority. Jupiter is the worldly wise. It knows all things that are necessary to know, except that it will never be able to solve the mystery of itself. Jupiter, therefore, is a wisdom in which worldly wisdom has been blended with divine wisdom. And if this blending is proper and complete, then Jupiter becomes the symbol of the philosophic elect. A philosophical person is not one who knows more than his neighbor, but one who lives better than his neighbor, and helps, if possible, to bring his neighbor into peace. Now Jupiter also points out that there will always be leadership of some kind in this world, that no matter what we do, no time will come when everyone is exactly the same. And in the interim by which we must climb this ladder, there will be many times in which leadership becomes important. And therefore the great problem arises in the name of the Jupiterian leadership. The